I'm Alexis Lexi Wilson, 30 years old today, and the smell of a perfect rosemary ribeye now lukewarm, abandoned on my Scandinavian table, clings to the walls of my Capitol Hill apartment like a cruel joke. 3 hours ago, I believed this dinner party would mend the fracture that has defined my life since the Urban Sense debacle. Yet as the clock blinks 7:59 p.m. and the candle wicks sag, my phone buzzes with a photo that rips the last stitch from that hope my parents. My brother Michael, his dazzling wife Sophia, even little Noah on Michael's shoulders, all standing on the cedar deck of our Lake Chelan house. Champagne raised beneath a salmon-pink sunset, captioned impromptu weekend with the ones who matter most. A phrase whose final word drills into my chest, digging for something rawer than shame and finding it. I stare so long, the screen auto-dims. Then Michael's text lands, "Sis, totally spaced, everyone headed up to the lake. Happy birthday, though." The casual cruelty curdles the garlic butter scent of the scallops I seared, for a father who once swore my palate matched any chef's. But it also freezes the ache solid, turning humiliation into an icy blade, sliding neatly between grief and fury. And as I save the photo, not as memory, but as evidence, I whisper a toast to the empty chairs. Congratulations. You just wrote your own eulogy, leaving the words to echo in the apartment's hush like the first click of a detonator. The next morning, a sullen January rain stripes my window, and while the ribeye browns the trash bag in a greasy shroud, I boot the Wilson Enterprises laptop my father lets me keep for light tasks. A pity lifeline after my AI prop tech algorithm burned $8 million in venture capital. My login still works because no one expects the fallen genius to wander beyond his sandbox. Yet 10 minutes later, I'm deep in the financials directory, pulse drumming as rows of numbers bloom across dual monitors. And there it is, 18 months of transfers, $5.3 million to Apex Consulting LLC, a Delaware shell so hollow it squeaks. Signed off by Michael and Sophia under the banner of Green Initiative Advisory, a fig leaf so thin it almost flirts with honesty. And for the first time in 3 years, the analyst in me grins, hungry. But hunting a hydra alone is suicide. So, at 2 a.m., I'm in a 24-hour cafe with Jessica Patel Wharton friend, turned white-collar investigator, sliding printed ledgers across chipped formica. Her eyebrows arc, her pen taps, and her verdict lands low. If this holds, Lexi, your family isn't family. They're suspects. A sentence that should hurt, but instead feels like oxygen after smoke. Because suspects can be prosecuted, a sister can only be ignored. Yet Jess's final question hovers between us like steam over stale coffee. Are you prepared for collateral damage? A query, I answer with a single, shaking nod that nonetheless feels eerily steady. Collateral arrives faster than fear. 2 days later, Grace Lee, my half-cousin, brilliant but jumpy systems engineer whose tuition I once covered, pings me with a string of Morse dots in the company Slack, then meets me in a parking garage stairwell to thrust a flash drive into my palm, whispering that Sophia has been running deep-fake scrubs on internal email logs, erasing audit trails, and threatening to expose Grace's ADHD records if she talks. The flash drive's plastic edges bite my skin like a vow, and in that stairwell, smelling of concrete and brake dust, I promise Grace protection, though I don't yet know how to protect even myself, leaving both our fates teetering on data I haven't dared to open. Opening requires the blessing of a ghost. So 3 nights later, I'm knocking on a battered door in an industrial district that reeks of wet cardboard. Victor Reynolds, the CFO my father exiled for embezzlement, peers out haggard, hand trembling from cheap rye, and tries to slam the door. Yet the spreadsheet snapshot of Apex freezes him mid-motion. Recognition flickers, followed by a volcanic, Years' damned fury that finally breaks into a rasp. They made me the thief. And when he pulls a dented lockbox from beneath a busted futon, extracting a silver hard drive like a relic, the living ghost entrusts me with it because, he says, "You're the only Wilson they didn't finish breaking." Words that clang within me like cathedral bells, tolling for war. War needs soldiers with voting power. So I trade elevator anxiety for Eleanor Wilson's penthouse view. My aunt listens to the lake house betrayal, studies the apex flowchart, then without sentimental flourish signs over her 25% proxy, murmuring that our grandfather's legacy has rotted under eco-friendly paint. And as I pocket the notarized form, the city lights below seem to reshape into a battlefield map, each tower a rook, each street a vein pumping toward a single date, circled in my calendar's blood-red ink, April 14th emergency board session, a meeting I will call, commandeer, and weaponize. Yet, even while proxies align, the Securities and Exchange Commission inserts a ticking clock. Investigator Marcus Hayes emails a formal preservation hold, giving Wilson Enterprises 10 days to self-report or face a raid, a deadline that sharpens every breath I draw. In the glow of my apartment's lone desk lamp, I lay out Victor's hard drive, Grace's flash, Eleanor's proxy, and Jessica's non-disclosure agreement like tarot cards in a spread of vengeance. And as the rain drums harder against the glass, I realize the only missing piece of leverage is the brother whose absence began this spiral, meaning the next step is to walk straight into his office, smile, and let him think I've come to beg, a thought that makes my heartbeat quicken with something perilously close to anticipation. Michael's corner suite glitters over downtown like a glass crown, and the moment I step past the frosted door etched Chief Sustainability Officer, I let my shoulders slump just enough to sell defeat. He welcomes the posture with a shark-bright grin, pats the leather visitor chair, and launches into a monologue about transformative carbon offsets, a speech so hollow I can hear the hum of the HVAC through every boast. But I nod dutifully, wait for his vanity to crest, then slide a single page across the desk, a doctored cost overrun report that pins Apex losses on a junior analyst, and murmur that Jessica is itching to leak it unless we find a family solution. Watching Michael's pupils tighten, his knuckles blanch, his belief that I'm still pliable harden into something exploitable, because fear is currency. And I've just minted it with his face on the bill, even as he leans forward to whisper, "You'd protect me over the outsiders, right?" A question I answer with a silent, practiced smile that lets him think the trap is his to set. The trap requires bait, so before leaving I ask for a ride to the executive garage, feigning a panic attack about reporters in the elevator. Sophia joins, her perfume a barbed mix of citrus and threat, and mid-descent she turns, voice polished steel, to warn that certain logs have gone missing. I feign confusion. She taps manicured nails on the rail in a rhythm too deliberate to be idle, and when the doors part, she lets me exit first. The scent of ozone from a passing Tesla hiding her final hissed promise, "Michael is sentimental, but I'm not stay where you belong." A promise that clings to me as I step into rain and realize even venomous snakes can be herded if the fire encircling them is hot enough. A realization that sharpens into resolve the second I spot Grace's discreet thumbs up from the shadowed stairwell camera. That night, our apartment war room blazes with overlapping voices. Jess decrypts Victor's files, while Grace reverse engineers Sophia's deepfake scrubber. Sam Carter, the white hat brother, Sophia believes is still loyal, messages an encrypted Cayman account map, and I juggle spreadsheets like grenades with pulled pins. At AO 217, the final ledger line reveals a pattern. Apex cash washes through a charitable climate fund, rebounds into an LLC tied to Thomas Black, then surfaces in Michael's cryptocurrency wallet 6 hours later. Proof so tight, Jess actually exhales a single incredulous laugh before noting the SEC deadline 3 days. No extensions, which means everything rides on persuading Arthur Vance to swing his 5% to our side without tipping him into public disclosure. A mission complicated by the fact he hasn't answered a call in 5 years, and reportedly fires advisors for arriving 60 seconds late. Yet I'm already scrolling flight lines to Los Angeles. Pulse syncing with the ticking download bar that will finish rendering our smoking gun at dawn. Arthur's booth at Musso and Frank is cloaked in red leather and history. He listens while I outline not just numbers, but motives: Michael's gambling debts, Sophia's rags to riches obsession, Thomas's Senate ambition layering data with the quiet fury of the betrayed. And when I finish, he closes the binder, traces the Wilson letterhead, and challenges, "You can win the vote, but can you run the aftermath?" My answer is an architect's blueprint for conquered green housing, my grandfather's never-built legacy, now revised with AI-driven energy grids and union wages. And as Arthur's weathered thumb taps the page, the maitre d' interrupts with a phone held high. Urgent call for Miss Wilson. Grace's voice crackles. Breathless, SEC wants a pre-meeting interview tomorrow. Hicks Building, 9 a.m. They may already suspect we're bearing evidence. A sentence that makes Arthur's eyes narrow before he slides his Mont Blanc across the table and signs the proxy with one deliberate stroke, sealing an alliance that causes every wine glass on the table to tremble in reflected chandelier light. Back in Seattle, the Hicks Building lobby is marble and menace. Marcus Hayes greets me politely, but his questions cut. Did I alter any ledgers? Did I instruct it to divert backup pathways? Am I aware obstruction is a felony? I answer with curated honesty, yes. I accessed reports. No, I deleted nothing. Yes. I plan a full disclosure at the emergency board session while Jess, legal pad poised, records every syllable. And when Marcus finally leans back, steepling fingers, he warns that raids begin if material misstatements persist past April 14th, then offers a neutral smile that reads like a countdown. We leave through revolving doors into sideways drizzle. And Jess mutters that SEC just tightened the vice on everyone, allies included, meaning our presentation must annihilate doubt in the first 5 minutes, or the agency will finish what we started. A reality that hovers like gunpowder in damp air as we hurry toward a taxi, whose roof drums with relentless rain. 72 hours remain. Victor detoxes on my sofa, reciting transaction IDs while Grace flags anomalies. Sam tunnels a secure live stream to shareholder platforms, and I rehearse the board presentation until each number feels etched into bone. At midnight on the 13th, I stand alone on my balcony, Seattle's skyline pulsing neon under cloud cover, and practice box breathing to calm a tremor that isn't fear so much as charged anticipation. Because by this time tomorrow, the Skydeck boardroom will fill with people who once deemed me a broken toy, and I will show them how dangerous discarded things become when someone finally decides they're worth repairing, yet as church bells toll far below. A notification pings. Unknown device attempted to access hard drive archive location, Wilson Tower server room. And the night seems to hold its breath, waiting to see which legacy will fracture first. The server room alert jerks me back to the war room where Grace is tracing the breach in real time. A shadow user ID masked, but MAC address matching Sophia's private laptop has copied 3 gigabytes from Victor's archive, then triggered an automated wipe designed to fry all local backups. And while Grace slams the kill switch, I grab my coat. Because if Sophia's pulling evidence at 2 a.m., she's preparing a counterstrike before dawn, a move that would let her spin the SEC raid as a malicious attack by a disgruntled employee, me, unless I physically secure the master drive first. A realization that sends me racing through rain-slick streets toward Wilson Tower, each red light feeling like a year of my life slipping away, each green a whispered dare that maybe I'm already too late. Security waves me through old badge. Newest lie yet inside the data floor, is a maze of humming racks and halogen glare, and 20 meters ahead, Sophia stands in stiletto heels, lugging a silver Pelican case that I instantly know contains the mirrored drive. Her poise cracks when she sees me sprint, but she recovers fast, drawing a stun gun with the same elegance she signs million-dollar invoices. And I freeze because one arc could end everything. Yet behind her, Sam Carter steps from a maintenance alcove, eyes conflicted, hand twitching near an emergency power switch, and time dilates so hard, I hear only heartbeats. Then Sam pulls the lever, plunging the aisle into pitch darkness that trades vision for opportunity. A barter I accept by barreling forward as servers wail, and Sophia's taser crackles past my ear like an angry wasp. We collide, the case skitters. My elbow smashes against steel. Pain explodes, but fingers close around the handle, and I pivot, using a judo roll just drilled into me during an insomnia break. Slamming Sophia into a rack, she wheezes, stilettos snapping, yet still hisses. You think this ends the story, which is when Sam powers the aisle lights back on, revealing Grace and Jess rushing with building security, their phone cameras rolling for redundancy. And in Sophia's widening pupils, I watch years of plotted ascension collapse into raw arithmetic stolen drive, plus documented assault equals felony obstruction, a computation that drains her face of its last color, even before Jess reads the Miranda warning she once practiced only in hypotheticals. Back upstairs, Victor, hearing the commotion, pours black coffee like communion while we duplicate the recovered drive to 3 encrypted SSDs, one for the SEC, one for Eleanor's attorney, one for off-site storage. My trembling elbow throbs, but certainty finally silences doubt. And as dawn bleeds over Seattle, I email Marcus Hayes a concise summary titled, Full Disclosure, Prior to Board Action, attaching the flowchart, the Cayman Ledger, and a time-stamped video of Sophia's failed heist, each megabyte a nail sealing the lid on decades of familial gaslighting. Yet, even while Hayes replies, acknowledged, see you at 0900, a restless dread remains because the boardroom battle still looms, and evidence, though lethal, must be wielded before shareholders like a scalpel, not a sledgehammer, lest the company itself bleed out alongside the guilty. April 14th rises cold and crystalline. I pace the Skydeck lobby rehearsing data points, and when the elevator doors glide apart, the board files in Robert stiff in a navy suit, Michael looking hollowed by sleeplessness, Thomas drumming anxious fingers. While Arthur and Eleanor exchange subtle nods, then suddenly Sophia appears, escorted by legal counsel but minus her usual aura, wrists still bearing faint red lines from overnight booking, and though she's barred from voting, her presence is a toxin designed to rattle me, yet the only tremor I feel is focus sharpening as I open the meeting, livestream counters ticking viewers by the thousand, every pixel a witness who will not forget. 5 minutes in, I've established the Apex payments. 10 minutes in, I've tied them to personal wallets. 15 minutes in, I cast Victor's restoration logs onto the holowall. And 20 minutes in, I play Sophia's own intercepted call, ordering the deepfake purge, her recorded voice ricocheting off glass walls, like verdicts from an invisible jury. Robert's jaw clenches. Michael's knees bounce. Thomas stares at the table, as though numbers might rearrange themselves into innocence. But they don't. And when I motion for the vote, Arthur's gravelly eye sounds like a gavel. Eleanor's with pleasure like a sword sliding home. The 2 swing directors fall in line, and I add my own voice last, not as flourish, but closure, carrying the motion unanimously to strip Michael and Thomas of titles, suspend Sophia, and initiate criminal referrals. Yet as security guides them toward the exit, Robert remains seated, eyes glassy, realizing the empire he built on trust was hollowed by the very heirs he groomed. A realization that hangs between us heavier than any courtroom sentence could. And I leave it unspoken because some reckonings are too personal for public record. After the vote, shareholders flood the comment stream with relief and fury in equal measure. But I cut through by announcing the Concord green housing revival, allocating 10% of my own equity to employee stock, promising audited transparency dashboards, live by quarter's end. And as the chat erupts in thumbs-up emojis, the stock ticker in the corner of the screen steadies, then inches upward, proof that markets, like families, crave accountability more than perfection, a lift that sparks cautious hope in Robert's tired eyes. Yet before I can parse that emotion, Marcus Hayes' messages need immediate press briefing. Optics critical, a reminder that victory inside the tower means nothing if the public narrative escapes us outside its walls. In the media suite, lights blaze, microphones bloom, and I frame the scandal not as a fall from grace, but a reclamation, emphasizing whistleblower courage, Grace's, Sam's, Victor's, while pledging full cooperation with regulators. Cues Marcus nods to, reporters pepper questions about family betrayal. But I anchor every answer in systemic reform, redirecting voyeuristic curiosity toward policy change. And when the last flash fades, I sense the story's arc bending from tabloid drama to corporate renaissance, a shift fragile as spun glass, yet real enough that even my pulse begins to believe it. Until my phone buzzes with a single-line text from Michael. Sent moments after his security escort cleared the lobby. "I'm sorry for everything, take care of Noah." A line that cracks my composure just long enough to remind me that justice, no matter how necessary, always leaves splinters in the heart. Splinters I'll have to face once the cameras stop. A weight that settles as I head toward the quiet hall, where a father waits for a conversation 30 years overdue. Robert stands alone at the end of the corridor, posture erect yet strangely diminished, the tailored shoulders of his navy jacket seeming to slope under invisible ballast. The clamor of press lights dims to a muffled throb behind me, and for 3 silent heartbeats, we simply look at each other. Father and daughter measuring scars, no balance sheet could ever list. He tries first, voice rough as gravel. "Everything you said in there true." I nod, watching the question extinguish itself in his eyes, replaced by a grief that feels older than both of us. He releases a breath, reaches into an inside pocket, and produces a rolled blueprint edged with coffee stains, grandfather's original Concorde design. The same parchment he once derided as idealistic nostalgia. Handing it over, he whispers, "I should have built this with you instead of burying it." The admission lands like rain on scorched earth, and I want to cradle it. Yet part of me still flinches from contact, so I say only, "Help me build it now." A truce conditioned on action, not apology, and he accepts by following me into the strategy suite where Victor, Grace, Sam, and Jess debate post-crisis triage. Victor, sober-eyed and steady after 3 pots of office coffee, sketches revenue projections on the glass wall, while Grace flags supply chain contracts previously steered to Thomas's shell vendors. Sam patches firewall holes exposed during Sophia's midnight heist, and Jess cross-checks every disclosure promised to the SEC. Robert listens, jaw tightening when he realizes how closely the company flirted with insolvency. Then, startling everyone, he volunteers to call creditors personally, leveraging his tarnished name to buy 60 days of forbearance. The room stills. No one expected the patriarch to accept grunt work yet. Jess nods approval, and I murmur, "Start with Cascadia Bank. They're spooked but reasonable. An assignment that acts as both olive branch and leash." He strides out dialing, and for the first time I glimpse a future where his experience serves, rather than suffocates. Though the sight brings a pang of sadness for years, squandered on hierarchy instead of partnership. By evening, the boardroom that witnessed our mutiny buzzes with a different energy engineers planning Concord's lead platinum mod. HR drafting equity sharing memos. Legal drafting cooperation letters. Stock stabilizes 2% above morning's open. And social feeds tilt from schadenfreude to cautious optimism. Yet amid the momentum, Jess reminds us the criminal side is just beginning. Arraignments for Sophia and Thomas are scheduled next week. Michael's plea deal hinges on full restitution. And the DA wants my victim impact statement by Friday. The mention of Michael stirs the phone in my pocket. His earlier text sits unanswered. A shard of regret I can't yet touch. Jess notices, arches a brow, but says nothing. She knows guilt and justice often share the same skin. Midnight finds me back at the apartment war room. Condensation fogging the windows as Seattle rain thrums like restless drums. The team's gone. Victor's dozing on the couch. Grace curled in an armchair, clutching a blanket and her laptop. I flip through the blueprint. Tracing my grandfather's penciled annotations, community garden here. Daycare co-op there. Visions of affordable dignity he sketched long before ESG became a marketing badge. My pulse steadies with each line until a sharp rap on the door jolts the calm. Jess steps in, soaked trenchcoat clinging, eyes bright with a concern that hollows my chest. SEC just forwarded us a whistleblower addendum, anonymous but detailed. It accuses Wilson Enterprises of falsifying emission data on 3 existing smart building projects. They're demanding immediate internal validation, or the public report goes live at dawn. The room spins. We just uprooted one cancer, only to have another malignant root surface, threatening to brand the entire reconstruction as greenwashing 2.0. Grace sputters. Those sensors report in real time. Any manipulation would have to be firmware level. And Sam, roused by the commotion, frowns firmware that I audited last quarter, but Thomas had contractor override keys. My stomach knots. Even in exile, the man still casts shadows. We open the attached evidence packet captures, showing CO2 figures hard-coded to plateau below regulatory thresholds, regardless of actual readings. The timestamps precede today's coup by months, proof the rot sprawls deeper than apex. Jess draws a long breath. If this goes public before we preempt it, every goodwill point you earned evaporates. Conquered funding, creditor trust, employee morale gone. Victor, awake now, presses fingertips to temples. I warned your father years ago about outsourced firmware. He mutters, voice trembling with equal parts anger and shame. All eyes pivot to me, waiting for the next chess move. But the board feels suddenly vast and booby-trapped. My earlier triumph reduced to a single reclaimed square on an endless field. Box breathing buys 10 seconds of clarity. Grace. Sam pull live sensor feeds from the 3 buildings, compare raw PPM to dashboard outputs. Victor dig through purchase orders. Find the contractor that supplied those override keys. Jess draft a midnight disclosure to Marcus, stating we've initiated a forensic audit within the hour. I glance at the clock, 02:03. We have 4 hours to verify truth, craft narrative, and, if necessary, shut those buildings before sunrise. Concord can wait. Credibility can't. Orders fly. Keyboards clack. Coffee brews. Somewhere in the frenzy, my phone buzzes a second time. Michael again. Voicemail now. Noah crying in the background. Michael pleading. Lexi. They froze my accounts. Noah's insulin. Please call. The sound slices deeper than any ledger line. I tuck the phone face down. First, integrity. Then, family, a hierarchy I despise, but must honor tonight. Though each ignored ring feels like mortar cracking in a freshly repaired wall. Live data streams populate the main monitor. Building 1 reports 980 ppm on raw feed. But the public dashboard still shows a pristine 410. Building 2 mirrors the discrepancy. Building 3 lags even worse. Sam mutters a curse. Firmware checks some mismatches, confirm tampering. Grace traces the update certificate to an offshore DevOps firm linked, unsurprisingly, to Thomas's consulting network. Jess's fingers fly drafting the SEC letter, while Victor simulates cash flow impact of shuttering 3 marquee properties for emergency retrofits, a hit we can survive only if creditors stay patient. I forward the preliminary findings to Robert with a terse directive. Prepare to announce temporary closures by 7 a.m., no spin. His reply arrives within minutes. Surprisingly decisive, understood. Drafting statement. Proud of you. The last phrase catches me off guard, almost derails my focus. But another sensor alarm blares, dragging attention back to numbers that don't lie even when people do. At 04:37, Grace confirms packet integrity across 20 sensors. Sam patches firmware bypasses. Dashboards refresh to true readings, alarming but honest. And Jess hits send on our voluntary disclosure, CCing Marcus, Eleanor, Arthur, and the board. Transparency buys goodwill. Truth, even ugly, is currency stronger than polished deception. Yet, as relief seeps in, Grace's screen flashes a different warning. Social media sentiment spikes on an unverified leak titled Wilson Green Scam, complete with doctored graphs, amplifying the emission fraud beyond reality. A misinformation wildfire is igniting. And we're already behind its first gust. Jess curses, somebody wants to kill the company before you can save it, and outside, dawn's first gray light crawls over the soaked skyline, as if bracing to witness another public reckoning, one that could dwarf yesterday's, because perception, once scorched, rarely rebounds, a realization that leaves us staring at each other, adrenaline drained, moments before we must decide whether to fight the blaze head-on or sacrifice yet more of the empire to contain it, decision pending. The sun rising, and the phone still vibrating with Michael's unheard plea. The false graph wildfire is racing across hatched green scam feeds before the sun fully scrapes the skyline. And every retweet carries a venomous subtext. Wilson fixed its carbon numbers. Now it's fixing the data again, so I push aside exhaustion, call our micro PR team, and order a live broadcast from Concord's vacant lot at 080. Then, still half shivering in yesterday's suit, I pick up the humming phone and finally accept Michael's call. Because if our detractors are weaving stories from shadows, the fastest counterpunch is a human face willing to testify under oath that the rot we uncovered is real and, yes, being treated. A gamble that means dragging my disgraced brother back onto the stage he just fell from. Michael answers with raw gratitude, voice cracking around Noah's muffled sobs and the metronomic beep of an insulin pump. I authorize an immediate medical fund release board policy permits life safety holds, even as I tell him the condition appear beside me in 2 hours. Confirm the firmware fraud originated with Thomas's network, and pledge his restitution toward retrofitting the buildings. A public confession that could convert him from parasite to penitent in the court of public opinion. Yet his silence stretches so long, I fear he'll balk until Noah whimpers, Dad, and Michael exhales. I'll be there. But Sophia's attorney wants me gagged. An obstacle I promised to demolish by folding his testimony into our SEC cooperation clause. A legal loophole that muzzles the gag instead of the witness, assuming we reach the lot before rumor becomes gospel. At 7:42, the Concord site is a muddy expanse of rebar and hope. Cameras already perched like vultures. Robert, eyes rimmed red, arrives with freshly printed sensor data and a prepared statement that begins. We lied by omission. 5 words he once swore would never pass his lips. And while Jess readies bullet points for Marcus, Grace live streams raw feeds from every compromised building, ticker taping real CO2 numbers so viewers can watch transparency update in real time. A risky tactic because honesty is ugly at first sight, but uglier if hidden. And behind the monitors, Sam pings me, bots amplifying #green scam, originate from Cayman IP tied to Thomas. Evidence in hand. Jess alerts the district attorney. Yet the timing is delicate. Expose the bot farm too early, and we look defensive. Too late, and we look duplicitous, so we stash the proof until Michael steps on stage, giving the narrative someone culpable, yet contrite. A live wedge cut straight through orchestrated chaos. He arrives at 07:59, rain slick. Jacket borrowed from a security guard. Noah's empty insulin box still in his fist. The cameras zoom, mics thrust, and I guide him to the podium where Robert and I flank him like mismatched bookends past failure. Present leadership. Future at stake while Jess nods cue. Michael clears his throat, confesses the firmware scheme, names Thomas as ringleader, admits gambling debts, then, voice breaking, pledges his entire trust fund to install open-source sensors audited by third-party environmental NGOs. A vow that triggers a visible microshift online. #velocity slows. Angry emojis bleed into skeptical thumbs up. And Grace whispers. Sentiment curve flattening. Numbers that tell me our transparency gamble is holding. Yet the decisive blow still waits in my pocket. A USB loaded with bot farm logs we've timed to drop 1 minute after the speech. Letting the public discover Thomas's manufactured outrage. And, by extension, question every anti-Concord narrative that follows. 0812 The Press Hall. Shaw Hall's Wi-Fi flickers under the load as journalists digest Michael's confession. I post the logs to an independent cybersecurity forum. Watchdog accounts latch on. And within seconds, screenshots flood Twitter. Thomas Black paid for Smearbot network while under criminal probe. A headline so damning even the most cynical commentators pivot, demanding his immediate arrest. While SEC's Marcus retweets our censor dashboard with a succinct verified, a one-word endorsement more potent than any corporate slogan. But relief is a thin blanket. Grace points out a new Spike conspiracy channels now claim Lexi staged everything to oust men and crown herself. A subplot I expected sooner or later. Yet its rapid ascent proves the Hydra still has heads, meaning Concord's success will depend on how we weaponize fatigue the public tires of endless scandal. So we must replace outrage with tangible progress before the next rumor cycle reloads. We break ground at 10:00 sharp. Excavators clawing wet earth while drones stream the first scoops worldwide. Robert hands the ceremonial shovel to Noah Symbol over optics, and the boy's shy grin cuts through the storm of adult failings, drawing a collective exhale from reporters who have run out of accusations. For now, still, as steel teeth bite soil. My phone lights with a final alert. Thomas's legal team just filed an emergency injunction to freeze company funds, alleging retaliatory defamation, a move that could halt construction payroll by Monday and reignite every doubt we spent dawn extinguishing, leaving me staring at fresh mud that might dry into foundation or sink into quagmire outcome, dependent on a courtroom battle that begins in 72 hours and could decide whether Concord rises or collapses before the first brick is even set. Story 2. My name is Elena Parker. I'm 32 years old, and I've spent the last decade building a life that nobody in my family seems to recognize. Last night, at my brother Ethan's promotion party in downtown Seattle, they poured him Dom Perignon, handed him a Rolex they joked I couldn't afford, and called him the family's only success. When Mom slipped me a black trash bag and Dad told me to clear empty bottles before anyone slipped on spilled champagne, every pulse in my body screamed that something had to change and fast. Before we dive in, if you love raw, no BS stories about family betrayals and the quiet power plays they don't see coming, don't forget to subscribe. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers, and your support helps me keep sharing these tales you won't find anywhere else. Now, let's rewind to how this all began. Ethan's big celebration was set in the Grand Horizons Ballroom, a glossy high-rise event space overlooking Elliott Bay. I arrived in a simple navy blouse and tailored trousers, clean, professional, intentionally unflashy. The room glowed with soft uplighting, white linen tables, and a wall of floor-to-ceiling windows reflecting the city lights. Everything felt like it belonged in a glossy lifestyle magazine. Except for one glaring detail, they never bothered to save me a seat at the head table. Instead, I was handed that trash bag. I watched my cousins in their designer heels and bespoke suits titter behind champagne flutes as I stacked empty bottles in silence. The humiliation settled around me like a lead weight, but I didn't crumble. I only waited. A few hours later, Dad raised his glass in a toast to Ethan. To our family's only success, who proves that hard work and a little Parker grit can take you anywhere. Applause filled the room as Ethan beamed. Then he winked at me and quipped, "Maybe one day you'll land a real job too, little sis." Laughter rippled through the crowd. I felt the familiar burn of betrayal. But instead of snapping back, I lifted my water glass, checked my digital watch, my only accessory, and said quietly, "Actually, my passive income just cleared more than your bonus check." The room froze. Ethan's smile faltered. And in that pregnant pause, I realized I held more power than they'd ever imagined. This was never about the money, though. It was about my family's refusal to see me as more than their go-to errand girl, and my silent decision to change that dynamic for good. As the celebration roared on without me, I slipped out the side door, leaving behind the echo of shocked gasps and crashing ice buckets. Outside, the damp Pacific air reminded me that Seattle never stays still. Why should I in my car? I opened the banking app I'd built from scratch, the one that verified every dividend, every rental deposit, every digital asset payout. My account balance blinked back at me like a silent promise the real success story was mine. And it was unfolding more dramatically than any promotion party could capture. With the night still young, and my family's messages lighting up my phone with confusion and panic, I didn't reply. I simply drove home, mind racing with the possibilities of what came next, and how I would reveal exactly who really carried this family on her back. The moment I shut the door on that gilded ballroom, adrenaline surged through me like electricity. I slid behind my laptop, opened the family emergency and events account, and watched every shared balance blink zero. No theft, just a reversal of the courtesy I'd extended for years, as my savings swallowed their cushion of entitlement. My phone buzzed with incoming calls labeled Mom, Dad, Ethan. I ignored them all. Their panic was my proof that the quiet contributions they'd taken for granted were the scaffolding holding up their perfect facade. Within 24 hours, the first overdraft notices arrived. The florist's automatic payment for Mom's charity gala declined. Ethan's premium car lease bounced. Our aunt's wine club renewal dinged red. Each payment-failed email landed like a judge's gavel, striking my family's inflated self-worth. I watched them scramble in the group chat, excuses, blame, pleas for a quick fix, but I stayed silent. After all, they had joked that I'd never amount to anything. Now they were learning what it felt like when the only person who could actually clear a bill decided to step back. By day 3, Ethan's texts had morphed from casual, "Hey, what's up?" to desperate missives laced with half-hearted guilt. He offered to refinance his bonus check, to sell the Rolex on eBay, anything to restore the power he'd always associated with status symbols. I half-typed a reply. "Check your own accounts," then deleted it. My refusal to engage was the sharpest rebuke I could deliver. In every moment of hesitation on their end, I reveled in the slow burn of justice. They had laughed at my lazy money, and now it was their lifeline that lay idle. That evening, I received a voicemail from Dad, his voice trembling with unaccustomed resentment. "Elena, we need to talk. This isn't you." I pressed delete twice before the message even finished. I wasn't the problem. The problem was a family who believed love meant exploiting my success. I poured myself a glass of wine and reviewed my next move, a formal audit request for the family trust, filed under a clause they'd never bothered to read. This wasn't just financial retribution, it was accountability delivered in black and white. 2 days later, letters stamped urgent began arriving at their door, notices of suspended distributions, invitations to mediate, cold reminders that fiduciary obligations weren't suggestions. My attorney's succinct cease and desist left no room for manipulation. I'd cataloged every luxury upgrade, every necessary expense they had funneled through my generosity, complete with bank statements and time-stamped screenshots. The moment they thought they could rewrite reality, I provided an unassailable record, and it hit them like a tidal wave. In the silence that followed, I noticed a shift. The family Instagram feed went dark. The group chat fell silent, and my parents' Sunday dinners went from boisterous to ghost town quiet. It was as if the scaffolding I'd removed had been the entire stage. I didn't gloat. I simply observed. When my cousin sent a tentative text, "Hey, you okay?" I replied, "I've never been better." It was the first time I felt honest about my place in their world. A week after Ethan's promotion party, Mom called again, but this time her voice was soft, almost fragile. "Elena, I'm sorry you felt unseen." I listened without responding. Forgiveness, if it came, would be on my terms. That night, I locked my accounts, updated passwords, and tucked the last legal notice into my desk drawer. I poured a final glass of wine, stepped onto my balcony overlooking the city lights, and breathed deeply. For the first time in years, I wasn't just coping, I was free. And I knew that once you claim your own worth, nobody can ever take it away again. The morning after Daniel's promotion gala, I woke to silence and a plan, sliding out of bed. I brewed coffee black as the resentment still simmering in my chest, then opened my laptop to gather every proof of my lazy money. Screenshots of dividend deposits, rental income transfers, and crypto payouts filled my screen like evidence in a grand courtroom. My hands moved deliberately, exporting statements, annotating receipts, arranging each file by date and amount until the quiet hum of my printer filled the room. I stacked the pages into neat folders, each tab labeling a source of income they'd never understood and always dismissed. By mid-afternoon, I was standing in front of my parents' front door, the envelope heavy in my hand. No note, no excuses, just the folder slid beneath the mat, waiting like a challenge. I turned on my heel and walked away before curiosity could strike me down. As I drove home, I imagined their faces as they discovered each page properties under my name, consulting invoices, passive income dashboards. I pictured Mom's forced gasp, Dad's confusion, Daniel's smug grin flickering into disbelief, and I felt, for the first time in years, unshakable calm. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed with frantic alerts. Account locked, payment failed, access denied, overdraft fees piled up on their shared checking account, utility bills bounced, and the florist Mom had hired for her charity luncheon emailed a refund request. Their perimeter of entitlement had collapsed inward, exposing a raw dependence on my silent generosity. In the family group chat, panic unfolded line by line. "Elena, what happened? Can you fix this? Please tell me you didn't do this." I read each message with clinical detachment, watching their world crack under the weight of truth. On day 3, Ethan, my cousin and perennial yes man, slid into my DMs. "Hey, just checking if you need anything." His tone was too casual. I replied, "I'm fine. then added one line, "Check your own statements." He went quiet. That night, I received a single text from an unknown number, Dad's. His words trembled through the screen. "I'm sorry you felt unseen." I didn't respond. Silence was my answer, because now they were hearing me loud and clear without a single syllable from my mouth. By the end of the week, a certified letter arrived at their door, an invitation to mediate the family trust, served with precise legal wording about fiduciary duty and misuse of funds. My lawyer friend confirmed receipt, and I watched as my parents' empire of convenience finally demanded their own dues. Their Instagram feed went dark. The Sunday dinner pics stopped. I imagined them gathered around the kitchen table, mouths agape over the cold legal text, realizing they had no encore for this revelation. Then came the real test, an olive branch dinner invite from Mom. I hesitated only a moment before accepting. That Saturday, I crossed the threshold of a house that felt smaller, its energy drained. Cousins greeted me by name for the first time that month, and Dad's eyes, once proud and distant, searched mine for permission to rebuild. Over roast and wine. They made toasts that mentioned both my achievements and Daniel's. Stumbling over the word, both as if it tasted foreign, I raised my glass in silent acknowledgement, savoring not vindication, but the quiet dignity of being seen at last. That night, as I walked to my car under a sky uncluttered by their expectations, I realized this chapter had closed, but the book was far from over. The calm confidence settling into my bones felt like a promise now that they knew my value. True respect could finally take root, and somewhere beyond the next sunrise, their next move would reveal whether they were ready to meet me halfway. The morning after Daniel's big night, I woke before sunrise with a singular purpose. Coffee in hand, I opened my laptop and pulled up my investment dashboard's rental incomes, dividend statements, crypto gains, consulting invoices, everything they'd laughed off as lazy money. I organized each screenshot, annotated every deposit, then hit print. The soft whir of the printer filled the quiet room as pages stacked into neat folders labeled Real Income, Passive Profits, Digital Ventures. I slipped them into a crisp manila envelope, heart pounding with a mix of relief and resolve, knowing that by day's end they'd all understand exactly how I'd built my life even if they'd refused to see it. By mid-afternoon, I found myself at my parents' front door. No knock, no pleasantries, just the envelope pressed beneath the welcome mat like a bomb with a timer. I didn't wait to watch them discover it. As I drove away, I imagined their shock, Dad's disbelief as he rifled through the pages, Mom's horror when she realized those family accounts I'd quietly emptied were the same ones they'd treated like an ATM, and Daniel's smug facade crumbling when he saw his sister's numbers eclipse his own paycheck tenfold. It wasn't long before my phone erupted. Account locked. Payment failed. Access denied alerts buzzed one after another as overdraft fees mounted on their shared checking. Utility bills bounced, and the florist for Mom's charity luncheon emailed a refund request. In the family group chat, panic unfurled like wildfire. Elena, what did you do? Can you fix this? We need that money. I read every frantic line without responding, watching the comfortable illusion they'd relied on collapse under the weight of truth. On day 3, a quiet ping, a DM from Ethan, my cousin, usually the first to latch on to any gossip. Hey, just checking in, everything okay? I typed back. I'm fine. Check your own statements. Silence followed. That night, my phone rang once from an unknown number. It was Dad, his voice trembling as he apologized. I'm sorry you felt unseen. I let it go to voicemail. My silence was louder than any confession I could offer. By the end of the week, a certified letter arrived at their home, a formal invitation to mediate the family trust. complete with legal citations about fiduciary duty and misuse of funds. Their Instagram went dark. The carefully staged Sunday dinner post stopped. No one spoke of it publicly. But behind closed doors, they scrambled, realizing the foundation they'd built on my quiet labor had nothing to stand on without my cooperation. When Mom finally invited me over for a family dinner, she called it, I surprised myself by saying yes. Walking into that familiar house felt different. Eyes lifted when I entered, cousins greeted me by name, and at the head of the table, Dad made a toast that mentioned both his children, pausing over the word as if tasting it for the first time. I raised my glass without a word, savoring the taste of acknowledgement. No grand speech, no dramatic flourish, just the quiet satisfaction of finally being seen. That night, as I slipped out onto the porch under a sky unburdened by their expectations, I realized the real victory wasn't improving anything. It was in reclaiming my peace. The folds of paper I'd left under their mat were more than numbers on a page. They were the lines I'd drawn around my life. And now, I could finally live beyond their narratives, stepping into a future where my value was as clear to me as the stars above. I never imagined I'd be the one rewriting our family's story. But here we are, 2 days after I slipped that envelope under the welcome mat. I watched the notifications roll in Dad's bank alerts, Mom's frantic texts, Daniel's silent unread messages. By Friday morning, I had cleared my inbox of his "Hey, let's talk please" and "Her, we're so disappointed" apologies. Instead, I packed a single suitcase, leaving behind every framed photo, every tchotchke meant to remind me of a childhood I outgrew long ago. I walked through the front door without glancing back, key in hand free, but uncertain of what came next. The flight to Denver was almost empty, save for a middle-aged couple in full ski gear. I stared out at the Rockies as we descended, remembering how our family used to vacation in the Rockies. Dad would ski. Mom would shop ski lodge trinkets. Daniel would brag about beating me down the slope. I closed my eyes and pictured snow-capped peaks, inhaling deeply, tasting the cold air before it ever touched my lungs. In that moment, I felt the same exhilaration I got when my passive income statement hit an all-time high, pure, unburdened possibility. I checked into a small Airbnb tucked behind a stand of pines and spent the afternoon walking into the forest. My phone stayed off. No voicemails, no messages, just the crunch of snow underfoot and the distant call of a jay. When I reached a clearing, I paused, letting tears spring unchecked. Not tears of sadness, but relief. Relief that I'd finally forced my family to acknowledge I was more than their background noise, their household ATM, their maybe one-day cautionary tale. Then I turned and saw footprints not mine, leading deeper into the forest, as if someone else had followed this path ahead of me. Back inside the cottage, I stoked the gas fireplace and spread out my plans: a business retreat, a investors meetup, a photography exhibit of those Rockies shots I'd taken in college. Each sheet was a promise that I was building something real, something that could withstand even the coldest family betrayal. I clipped my best bank statements and startup milestones into a binder, closed it, and traced the embossed logo with my thumb. It felt symbolic, like closing one chapter to start the next. But when I reached for my phone to book a train to Boulder, there was a new voicemail from Daniel. His voice was uncharacteristically unsteady. He stumbled over words I'd never heard him stumble on. I didn't realize. I thought, "I'm sorry." He admitted it: his jealousy, his mockery, his blind faith that success looked only one way. He asked if I'd be willing to meet, just to clear the air. I sat with that message as the fire crackled behind me. Part of me wanted to pick up, to hear him truly apologize, to see if real remorse could thaw years of cold shoulders. But as I closed my eyes, I heard the distant echo of my own laughter from Denver's snowy trails, the laughter of someone unafraid to live on her own terms. So I called him back, not to negotiate a peace treaty, nor to rejoin their misguided chorus of congratulations. I asked only one question: do you believe I deserve my success? There was a long pause, longer than any silence they'd ever imposed on me. And then he answered, truthfully this time. And in that moment, I realized that forgiveness isn't about erasing the past, but choosing who you want walking beside you into the future. Story 3. My name is Emily Johnson. I'm 32, and this is the moment I learned my family valued me only as their personal ATM. I flew 9 hours before dawn, weary but excited, to celebrate my brother Michael's engagement in a rustic chic barn outside Seattle. I'd even gifted him $10,000 for the ring without a second thought, no lecture, no repayment plan, just a quiet message. I'm proud of you. But the moment his fiancée, Brooke, spotted me, she sneered so loudly that half the guests turned. Oh, you showed up. We already have too many nobodies here. Laughter rippled through the room, and I felt the air pinch tight in my chest. I didn't shout. I didn't plead. I smiled, nodded, and walked out. That night, I reversed the bank transfer, blocked both Michael and Brooke on every channel, and posted the screenshot on Instagram. Congrats to the happy couple. Hope entitlement pays better than I did. And just like that, the 9-hour drive home felt like a road to freedom. I built my career from scratch, pouring nights into UX design and freelance projects so I could afford rent on my own. Yet, the one time I offered help, I became background noise. Michael grew up in the same house, but he slid through life on charm and half-effort while I worked for every client, every portfolio highlight, every dollar in savings. I watched our parents drain their retirement to rescue his credit card bills. Yet, when I quietly asked for help covering a costly surgery last winter, my dad sighed. She has a future. You're just a burden. And my mom agreed. We can't save you both. Their tones weren't cruel, they were final. And, as I listened, immobile at my kitchen table, I realized I had no safety net. That realization didn't break me. It clarified me. I didn't expect apologies or tears, but I would not beg for scraps. In the days after the engagement party, my phone exploded texts from Michael begging for forgiveness, voicemails from Mom pleading for explanations, threats from Brooke's lawyer over defamation. I read them all from my quiet apartment, clutching a travel mug of strong black coffee. I didn't respond because words had failed me before. Instead, I watched my bank balance inch back upward. My freelance income doubled as I landed 2 major clients, and I found peace in a sleek workspace I'd purchased outright. Every dollar I earned was a testament to my own worth, not theirs. Yet each notification felt like a tug at old scars, the unspoken promise that blood meant loyalty, the unacknowledged labor that kept them afloat. 3 days later, the family group chat lit up once more, this time with gossip about my Instagram post leaking into their social circles. Some defended Michael, others quietly reached out to tell me they understood, and a few accused me of drama. Then, out of the blue, I received a pale lavender envelope in the mail, a hastily printed save the date for their wedding, my name misspelled beneath Brooke's perfect cursive. No personal note, no invitation to heal the rift, just a gloss of civility over the fracture they'd caused. I tossed it into recycling and felt a strange calm. I hadn't started this spiral. I had simply honored my own line. Family isn't defined by blood, I thought, but by who shows up for you and who sees you when you show up for them. I hadn't seen my family in 6 years, not by choice, but by necessity. When Mom fell ill last winter, I packed a bag and flew across the country, hopeful that time had smoothed the jagged edges between us. Instead, I was met with thin smiles and pointed barbs. "You ruined everything when you left." My brother, David, spat at our first dinner back home. "Things were better before you came back," Dad added, as though my return was a coronation of chaos. I didn't argue. I simply stood, walked out, and blocked their numbers. By noon, my phone showed 22 missed calls and a single voicemail marked urgent. Whatever it was, I knew it would change everything. I opened the voicemail on my own terms. David's voice trembled a rare crack in his flawless armor as he begged for my help with a bank hold on the mortgage account. After I left, they'd learned the hard way that the autopay I'd quietly maintained for 3 years was the only thing keeping the house from foreclosure. Realization sharpened in my chest. I had been their silent savior, the ghost in their machine, and now they wanted the ghost back. I closed my eyes, centered myself, and recalled the access I still controlled. That afternoon I logged in, disabled every auto transfer, and wrote a note, "Responsibility transferred. Good luck." Then I watched them scramble. Their panic was almost artful. Doorbells rang unanswered. Security codes failed. Calls to their own phone plan bounced. I checked the foreclosure tracker online as notices lit up for utilities, HOA fees, even their car lease. I'd financed Dad's SUV through my corporate account when credit ran dry, and now I reported the lease delinquent. I didn't feel triumph, only an odd clarity, as tow trucks queued before their driveway and bank notices piled against the front door. The house they thought they owned was slipping through their fingers, and for the first time, they saw me not as the problem, but as the only solution. Meanwhile, I reclaimed my life, without the weight of their demands. I slept through the night for the first time in years. I cooked healthy meals instead of living on coffee and protein bars. I enrolled in therapy, unpacked old grief, and discovered a strength I'd never known. A cousin texted quietly that she'd seen the foreclosure sign, proof that my quiet refusal spoke louder than any argument. The silence from my family was different now. It wasn't cold or punishing. It was the rumble before their reality collapsed under its own contradictions. 30 days later, the bank posted the final foreclosure notice. A for sale sign replaced our family name. The cars were gone. The laughter died out. I watched through a neighbor's social media post as movers carted their belongings into a rented U-Haul. For them, it was a defeat. For me, it was liberation. I didn't gloat. I simply closed my laptop and felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The place that had been a prison of expectations was no longer mine to bear, nor theirs to abuse. Weeks passed before I heard from Mom again. Her letter arrived by post, no signature, but her trembling script. She didn't beg. She only wrote, "I wish things had been different." I folded it once, placed it in a drawer, and let it rest, unopened. I didn't hate them. I just didn't owe them a place in my life anymore. Sometimes the loudest boundary is the one you build in silence. And in that silence, I finally found my peace. I used to believe my family might be flawed, but at least they were fair, until my sister collapsed under a mountain of debt. She racked up chasing designer bags and weekend getaways she couldn't afford. When the collectors started calling, Mom and Dad drained nearly all their retirement savings to bail her out. They said she just needed support, a soft landing to find her footing again. I never questioned it aloud, but the unspoken promise of reciprocity hung in the air like a noose. So, when I quietly asked for help covering a surgery bill, nothing elective, just necessary, and Dad sighed, "She has a future. You're just a burden." And Mom added, "We can't save you both." I felt a cold finality wrap around me, sharper than any outright rejection. And, in that moment, something inside me shifted. I stopped trying to earn their pity. Instead, I swallowed my pride, sold camera gear and collectible books, picked up freelance clients, and applied for every grant I could find. I worked through nights with a heating pad on my side and a single roommate who offered help without knowing why. Determined to pay for my own surgery rather than beg those who deemed me unworthy. Post-op, I built a new rhythm ice packs at dawn, Zoom calls by noon, designed mock-ups at midnight. As my scar healed, so did my resolve. I refused to trade dignity for handouts, and in that fierce clarity, I realized that true freedom lies in standing alone. Months later, with my online design business doubling revenue and a prestigious nonprofit offer on the table, I quietly upgraded to a sunlit one-bedroom apartment. I posted a single photo of my new workspace beneath a caption that read, "Start of something good," never tagging anyone, yet knowing the message would reach the right eyes. By evening, my phone erupted missed calls labeled Mom, Dad, and countless texts begging for explanations. I ignored them. Their daughter, the one they once disowned, was now exactly the kind of stable success they had refused to support, and they didn't know how to ask without apology. After 2 weeks of radio silence, a letter landed at my old address, a printed plea wrapped in scripted sorrow, reminding me of the pain I'd endured. I folded it once, placed it in my desk, and let it sit unopened. Then, I changed my number. No goodbye, no emotional spectacle, just the final boundary I had drawn in the sand. I didn't destroy the family I was born into. I simply reclaimed the life I'd built for myself. And when I woke the next morning to the soft hum of my own alarm, I finally understood that sometimes survival demands you walk away, leaving behind only the echo of your own quiet triumph. I never imagined the day I'd outgrow my parents' expectations would begin with cold steel clamps and a scalpel. But there I was, bedridden in a hospital gown, each breath laced with pain and resolve. When the surgeon said the operation was a success, relief should have washed over me. Instead, I felt a fierce calm settle into my bones. I had crossed a line no one could redraw. Back home, crutches under my arms, I transformed my pain into purpose. Sleepless nights became design marathons, rebranding proposals, client calls, invoices drafted between ice pack breaks. I watched my bank balance swell, not as validation, but as proof I no longer needed their lifeline. Each deposit was a beat in the drum of my independence. Then came the nonprofit's offer, lead creative director on a 6-figure retainer. Fully remote, I accepted without fanfare, but made one quiet announcement, a single Instagram post of my sunlit home office, captioned, "Here's to new beginnings." I didn't tag my family, yet the echo of that line reached them anyway. Within hours, my phone buzzed missed calls from Mom, Dad, and dozens of texts pleading, "Please call us." I didn't. In their silence all those years, I found an unexpected peace. Now, their frantic voices threatened to shatter it. When I finally checked my messages, I learned my sister had spiraled back into debt. My parents were squabbling over finances, and my brother, once golden boy, was scrambling to explain how I'd anonymously saved the day again. But I was done playing savior. Changing my number wasn't cruelty, it was reclamation. No hope you're well, no passive apologies, just the soft click of voicemail turning off. I was no longer their safety net, nor their scapegoat. I was a woman who'd learned to stand alone. A month later, a forwarded invitation arrived at my old address. "You're invited, please join us." My name was misspelled, the tone hollow. I smiled as I dropped it in the recycling bin. Some doors never reopen, and sometimes that's exactly how they should be left. If you've ever realized your worth outside the roles others assign you, this story is for you. 3 months after that single, defiant post, my phone buzzed with an email notification I both dreaded and anticipated. It was the nonprofit offering me the creative director role in writing, asking for my signature on the contract. The 6-figure salary felt surreal proof that I'd built something solid with my own 2 hands. Not from their charity, but from my late-night hustle and icy determination. I signed it without hesitation, then exhaled for the first time in years, knowing the next chapter was entirely mine to write. Settling into my new role, I crafted logos and brand guidelines between sips of coffee in my sunlit apartment. Each revision, each client call, crowned me with confidence I'd never found at family gatherings. The voice I'd hushed for so long, the one they'd labeled too quiet, too unambitious now, led creative meetings, shaped campaigns, and earned genuine praise. And in that praise, I discovered validation that needed no qualifiers. Meanwhile, muted group chat notifications blinked on and off, a silent reminder of the bridge I'd burned. I didn't delete the group. I simply let it lie dormant, occasionally. I peeked through old messages, birthday well wishes I'd never received, passive-aggressive sales pitches for sister's business, my own congratulatory emojis drowned by everyone else's chatter. But I never replied. The silence I kept was my strongest punctuation, a boundary they'd chosen not to cross. One evening, a cousin I'd barely known reached out via LinkedIn. "Saw your post. You're killing it," she wrote, then added, "Wish I'd known you needed help sooner." Her message landed like a lifeline, proof that if you show up for yourself, even strangers will rally. I thanked her and offered to mentor her own freelance journey, realizing that community could be grown on mutual respect, not debt and duty. Then, 6 months after my number change, a handwritten card arrived at my new address. The envelope bore my name in my mother's careful script. Inside was a single sentence: "I'm proud of you even if it took losing you for me to see it." No apology, no request, just that weighty confession. I held the card against my heart, feeling the crooked tug of longing and triumph. I laid the card on my minimalist desk beside the mountain of work that now defined me. Instead of replying, I drafted a new client proposal. My plate may have been full, but at least I was serving myself first. That night, I scrolled through the wedding website link my brother's fiancée had sent days earlier, a lavish barn celebration. Guest list still open. The RSVP button blinked. For a moment, I hesitated, a flicker of the old yearning to belong tugging at me. Then I closed the tab. Sometimes, letting go is the greatest gift you give yourself.